Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. Scott Luton and Marcia Williams with you here on Supply Chain. Now, welcome to today's live stream. Marcia, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Scott. How are you doing?
I am, you know what? I'm doing fine, but the summer just won't go away. We're going to be in the 90s once again in
Wow.
Metro Atlanta. But, Marcia, good news is after today and maybe tomorrow, the next 5 or 6 days are projected to be in the upper 70s only. How's that sound?
Oh, that's great. That's great.
All right, but we're getting into fall. We're getting into fall. It's my favorite, one of my favorite times of year. Some of my favorite holidays, except for Halloween. We'll touch on that later, a little later on. In fact, folks, we're going to touch on a lot today because it's the Buzz, where every Monday at 12 noon Eastern Time we discuss a wide variety of news and developments and industry insights, you name it, across global supply chain and business. And Marcia, we got some good stuff to get into today, including the ILA-USMX impasse, NASA supply chain problems. Yeah, even the smart folks can have a challenge with supply chains. An update on sourcing practices in the retail world, a little bit of Halloween, as I mentioned, and a whole bunch more. So buckle up and get ready. Marcia, should be a great show, huh?
Of course, looking forward to it.
I am too. We've had some great shows working together the last couple of months. And you know what? We're going to add one more piece of news because today we've got a wonderful guest joining us here in really just a few minutes as we dive more into, as I mentioned, that ILA-USMX situation. We got Taylor Jackson, President and CEO with the Maritime Association of South Carolina. So stay tuned, stay tuned, stay tuned. Hey, two things before we get going. First off, be like Gino Pledger and let us know what you're thinking in the comments. Gino says, hey, rain headed in too. Hey, Scott and Marcia. Great to see you, Gino, from North Alabama. Hey, Atlas, tuned in via YouTube. Let us know what part of the world you are in. And big thanks to Amanda behind the scenes who says, happy Buzz Day all. Say hello and let us know where you're watching from. That's right. So give us your take in the comments, whether you're tuned in LinkedIn, YouTube, X, Facebook, Twitch, no matter. And secondly, Marcia, if folks enjoy the show today, we'd love for them to share it with a friend and their network. Would you say? Sharing's caring, right?
Of course. Yes.
All right. So before we bring in our guest, right, and we talk about one of the biggest topics that most of, at least North America supply chains, really the global industry really is talking about, that the stalemate with our ports. More on that in just a second. But before we welcome in Taylor, I want to bring on a couple resources here. Starting with that said, we celebrated, this is our almost weekly newsletter. We celebrated yesterday the first day of autumn, which was yesterday, as we talked about, Marcia, as well as the power of good coffee. Look at that title, Coffee First, Please, and then Life, right? We also included news, views, events, resources, tools, you name it. So check out this edition of With That Said. Marcia, did you happen to take a look when we dropped that yesterday?
Yes, yes. And I always like reading it because it's a good summary. So yes, it was very good. In particular, the section about planning and of course what we are going to talk today, right?
That's right. That is right. Good stuff there. Good stuff. And, you know, we also put in a plug for coffee, good coffee, Ariel Resupply. It is veteran owned and operated. Check out With That Said, which I think we've dropped the link right on time, right here. We dropped the link to With That Said right there in the comments. Check it out and let us know what you think. And check out that delicious coffee as well. Hey, Jenny Froome, happy Buzz Day from South Africa. Great to see you, my friend. I think you were checking out Supply Chain Now in Espanol, which had a live kickoff event here today with our friend Sofia Rivas Herrera. That is wonderful. See, help me out, Marcia. How do you think that first name is pronounced?
Sophia.
Oh, no.
You
I'm sorry. The one I'm sharing. Is it
because that is Portuguese. Okay, Joao, I believe.
Okay,
Joao.
Joao. Great to
Yes,
have you here. I hope we got your name right. But welcome. Looking forward to your
yes.
perspective today. T squared. And the fall slap is official. Bring on the cider and the nourishment. T-Squared, great to see you as always. And appreciate that, Jenny, who says so much amazing content in the With That Said newsletter. Baker. Chuck Baker is here. He made an important contribution to today's show. He says, looking forward to having Taylor on. Thanks for getting her on the show. Chuck, hey, I appreciate your facilitation there. I'm looking forward to Taylor's perspective in just a moment. Quick things. Resources, right? Resources are so important in this fast-moving world. I want to share this resource that most of our listeners across the globe have heard us talk about before. We invite you to check out the recently released U.S. Bank Freight Payment Index for second quarter 2024. It is full of freight, supply chain, economic observations, and a whole bunch more, driven by tons and tons of data. And it's a great resource, especially when you combine it with others out there, other great resources out there, as we're all trying to understand what's going on in the domestic freight market. We're going to drop the link there in the chat and let us know what you think. Marcia, it's important to put as many fingers on the pulse of the freight market as we can, huh?
Yes, very important, and to get to know and understand the data. So
yes, absolutely. We move stuff in global supply chain, so it's kind of important to try to see what's going on in the freight markets. Finally, folks, one more event is taking place this week. In fact, it's taking place tomorrow, and it needs to be on your radar. From our friends at Logility, come join us at Logicon 24, an exclusive virtual event packed with insights from industry experts, innovative solutions, and my favorite part, because I registered over the weekend, real world case studies, right? All focused on reimagining your supply chain to help you stay ahead. So again, the event is tomorrow. It's free. It's virtual. It's easy to register. So check it out on Tuesday, September 14th, and we're dropping a link right there in the chat so y'all can let us know what you think. Let's see here. Hey, look here. We nailed the pronunciation. We nailed it. So that's great feedback. And Marcia, that was Joao. Say it again for me, Marcia.
Joao.
Joao. Okay. All right, Joao. Great to have you here.
Yeah.
Maria's tuned in from Madrid. Great to have you back as always, Maria. And we have dropped the links, as I mentioned, to the Freight Payment Index as well as Logicon 24, which again is a free virtual event from our friends at Logility. Okay, so Marcia, are you ready to get to work?
Yes, ready.
You're always ready and succinct with your perspective. I like it. If you need 4 words to explain something, Marcia, you're only going to use 4 words. I wish I had that quality. All right, let's get into the topic that the world is certainly talking about. One of the biggest topics in supply chain right now, and that is the ILA-USMX stalemate. Now, as reported here by NBC News, the largest union of maritime workers in North America is getting its members prepared for a potential strike that would be a major disruption, major with a capital M, with far-reaching repercussions. Now, let's level set a bit for all of our audience members out there. Some of y'all have been in the industry for a long time and know this topic well and the players well, and others may be newer. And we want to bring everybody along in this conversation. So, as you may know, the International Longshoremen's Association, ILA, well, their contract with the United States Maritime Alliance, the USMX, is set to expire at midnight on September 30th. The contract covers about 45,000 workers at ports in the Gulf Coast and the East Coast, which all combined handles about 60% of shipping traffic in the U.S. Thus far, Marcia, the U.S. government has not intervened. Folks aren't expecting the government to intervene, at least by my account. And it's been reported to us that the two sides haven't even conducted negotiation meetings since July. Marcia, it's tough to solve things if parties aren't talking, right?
Yes, and considering that it's since July and we only have 1 week and a half.
Right. And it's coming up quick.
Yeah.
That's a lot scarier than Halloween, which we're going to touch on later in the show, at least in my book. So to help us understand this big developing story, I want to bring in the leader of an organization that serves as the leading advocate in community for the maritime industry in my home state of South Carolina. I want to welcome in Taylor Jackson, President and CEO with the Maritime Association of South Carolina. Taylor, how you doing?
Good morning. Thanks for having me. How's it going?
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. It's great to have you here. Hey, Taylor and Marcia, got to do something, and hopefully y'all understand. When your mom joins you on a live stream, you got to give her a shout out. So Leah Luton from Aiken, South Carolina, great to see you today. Love you, Mom.
Perfect.
So Taylor, we also got to give Chuck Baker a shout out. Marcia, we were talking about Chuck in the pre-show. He's an incredible supply chain leader, fellow veteran. He's moved mountains in so many ways for years, and I personally admire all the work he still leads when it comes to getting forward to our young students and future leaders. Taylor, I think we're in alignment there, huh?
100%. Chuck is phenomenal, and I'm glad he was able to make this connection for us. And I miss working with him on the school thing, but hopefully I'll get him a little bit more involved in the Maritime Association as well.
Oh, hey, he will. He's got that Midas. That's right. He's got that Midas touch. Anything he touches turns to gold for sure. And hey, really quick before I move forward with Taylor and Marcia, folks, I may have misspoke earlier. That Logility event, Logicon 24, is on the 24th of September, which is tomorrow, not the 14th. So we're not looking in past. So thank you there, Amanda, in the chat there. Okay. So you know what? When you get people together and you start kind of peeling layers of the onion back, you find all kinds of common threads. And what we found out in the pre-show is Taylor's been in the Charleston area for over 12 years now, and Marcia has spent 7 months on a previous on a previous gig or contract or project there in the Charleston area. So before we get into the ILA-USMX situation, we got a little fun warm-up question for you both. Taylor, it's not fair because there's so many great places to eat in Charleston, but what is one of your favorite restaurants?
Yeah, tough question. All right, so I'm gonna give kind of 3 answers. So
Okay.
Leon's is a good go-to for fried chicken. It probably has the best fried chicken sandwich out there. 167 for oysters and tuna burger.
Okay.
And then if you just want a very great overall meal, La Pizzeria. It's this very unassuming Italian restaurant in Mount Pleasant. Been there for years. It's probably my go-to for sure.
Taylor, love those recommendations. I would just add before I go to Marcia. Yeah. Hey, 3. I'm gonna check all of them out too.
Yeah.
I don't think I've been into those 3. Justine's Kitchen, which closed down a couple of years ago. Man, that is I miss it. I miss it every time I make my way into Charleston. Marcia.
I will say the restaurant that took its place, it's a Pakistani restaurant, Mom Saab. Very good. Okay.
I'll add that to the list too. All right. So Marcia, you were there kind of in the greater Charleston area, right? What's one delicious restaurant you ventured to when you were there for about 7 months?
Yes, I think if I recall correctly the name, and maybe Taylor, you can help me out here, because I remember the food, how it was, but the name, I think it was the Lake House or the Lake.
Something like that.
More than one.
Yeah.
It has more than one.
Check it out.
Because the first time I made a mistake and I went to a different place.
There you go.
Well, the good thing is, Marcia and Taylor, you can just about stumble into no shortage of wonderful restaurants no matter where you go in the Charleston area.
That's
so
right.
Taylor, great to have you here. And hello, it's a family and friends edition of the Buzz here. Aunt Pam, Luton Godfrey, great to see you here. Aunt Pam, looking forward to your take perhaps on the next topic we're getting into, which is the big situation here, right? The ILA-USMX, big potential disruption that we're staring directly into the face. But before we get to there, Taylor, I think our audience would benefit from a little bit of context. So if you would tell us a little about yourself and your role and your organization, right? The Maritime Alliance, South Carolina.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the president and CEO of the Maritime Association of South Carolina. We are a nonprofit member-based organization that at the core of what we do promotes maritime commerce and all things related to the supply chain. So we have over 250 company members throughout South Carolina. Obviously, I sit in Charleston, so we are very heavy based in Charleston, but we are a statewide organization, and you'll start to see me kind of out and about in Greenville, Columbia, Georgetown, Myrtle Beach areas to try and grow our mission. The core of what we do is education and workforce development. So I love to work with the schools. I love to work with the industry to promote this this career path. A lot of people don't know that there's, tons of good paying jobs in their backyard. So I like to promote that. I like to work with the schools. We also host several networking events throughout the year. And really, we're just aiming to be the resource for all things maritime and supply chain related.
I absolutely love y'all's mission. And Marcia, we've talked about this a lot. One of the silver linings of the terrible pandemic was the awareness of global supply chain, right? And we still have more work to do because, as Taylor described, there's a lot of folks in supply chain, outside of supply chain, that really aren't really aware of all that goes on in our ports, in our ocean shipping carriers, and all the wonderful, talented people that help keep all that whole ecosystem running. Marcia, awareness is a good mission, huh?
Yes. And as you were mentioning, Scott, this is affect these ports and is also global. But we went not through a similar situation, but we had many issues with ocean freight with the pandemic. So
right.
the audience can resonate with that.
That's right. And that awful disruptions throughout the pandemic. But what we're looking at right now could be a disruption that we haven't seen in a long, long time. And this is what I want to do next, Taylor. So now that we know, and I didn't try to rename your organization, I apologize. I think I snuck in Alliance instead of Association. Folks, it's a Maritime Association of South Carolina. If you want to learn more, we're already dropped the URL right there in the chat. But what would you? So Taylor, you're plugged in a way that a lot of folks across the world aren't. From where you sit and conversations you're having, both public and private, and all types in between, what can you share right now about where both sides of the stalemate sit when it comes to the ILA-USMX stalemate?
Yeah. So basically, we're obviously, I'm not involved in any of the negotiations at all. So I get my news from channels similar to everyone else, but at the core of this, the union is arguing for better wages, and they want continued protections against automation. Obviously, automation, as we're moving into 2024 and later on, automation it's a buzzword. It's going to continue to be a hot topic moving forward in the supply chain. I think COVID brought that to light, especially. But, we need to make sure that automation, enhances efficiency. You wanted to make sure that people don't think it's going to replace jobs. You want it to do, to make jobs better. You don't want it to get rid of people. So I think toggling that line is going to be really important moving forward.
Excellent point, Taylor. And I got to believe, Marcia, I'm a very practical optimist, right? And there's got to be a world and a united position where we can bring automation into really all parts of global business, certainly global supply chain, to gain those efficiencies and to make our days easier, right? While protecting the human element, right? Ensuring good jobs, safe, good pay, advancement opportunities. There's got to be a common ground where we can get all of that, kind of get our cake and eat it too. Marcia, your quick thoughts here on what Taylor shared.
I think we want to embrace automation, again, to gain efficiencies, and doesn't mean that we are replacing jobs. I see that as we are changing jobs. That's my point of view.
Yeah. So I got to park the optimism for a moment, because Taylor, I'm not sure about what you and Marcia see, but as I have connected with folks in the know that know the leaders and the sides, they tell me it's not a question of if a strike takes place, but rather how long. So we'll see if that comes to pass. We've got, 7 days or so left. So if a strike does indeed take place, Taylor, what would you, how would you describe some of the impact that we'll see?
Yeah, I mean, just here in South Carolina, you're looking at millions of dollars a day loss in economic activity. So, that's just in South Carolina. So you're going to be doing billions of dollars a day. The automotive, the agriculture, those industries are going to be especially vulnerable. You really just want to make sure that that once a strike does happen, if it happens, we figure out a way to get everyone back to the table to get a deal done in the best way possible to get this supply chain back on track and to keep the economy running. I read that even a week-long strike could take about 6 weeks or more to recover from. And you're already gearing up for that peak season. I know you guys are going to look at Halloween spending. You've got Christmas. You've got, major retail imports coming in. That, this could be quite damaging.
Oh gosh, absolutely. To put it in perspective, and Marcia, I'll come to you just a second, but there hasn't been an actual strike since 1977, right? So it's been a long time since we have seen something along the lines. Of course, lots of things have changed in the almost 50 years since then, right? Alan Murphy, I think I shared this last week on the Buzz. Alan Murphy, CEO of C Intelligence, says that, quote, kind of along the lines of what Taylor was sharing. He says it would take 6 days to clear the backlog from a one-day strike, just a one-day strike. And many analysts have also claimed that the 11-day lockout, not strike, but a lockout at West Coast ports back in 2002 cost the economy some $1 billion a day.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. All right, Marcia, those are that is major disruption, major cost. It's going to be a lot of friction potentially. Hopefully we can mitigate it. As Taylor said, if a strike happens, get all the parties back at the table and have constructive, practical conversations that will get things resolved. I would hope, just my opinion, I'd hope that given the stakes and the immense cost, that maybe we can get the government involved and help mediating things where everyone can win. But Marcia, your thoughts here?
Yes, for sure, it's a major impact. And if we get to that point, it will have an effect how long it is. So
That's right.
I think we need to be prepared, right, with different scenarios.
Yeah, and Scott, I mean, you said it. The political administration of Biden and Harris, they could step in. It is an election year, so I think that makes it a more difficult decision on their end. I think Biden's actually has come out and said that he does not plan to do this, but he can implement. I think it's an 80-day cooling off period is kind of what it amounts to. Now that still means a deal has to be made. It just doesn't have that 1 week looming deadline.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that, because if you've got to break the glass to use that option, now's the time to be smashing that glass, and I'll tell you on the flip side, Mr. Daggett that leads the ILA has come out and said, hey, we don't want the government to intervene. Of course, there's some leveraging and some negotiation positions there, but I tell you, for all of our benefit, for all parties, right, and to prevent a calamity that no telling how big will be, I'm hoping that, as you say, Taylor, that the Biden administration will step in and help resolve. Chuck says, hey, if we have a strike, would that shut down major companies like BMW? Many folks out there may not know, if you're not from the South Carolina and the Southeast, that BMW has a major presence in the upstate of South Carolina in particular. Taylor, any comments that you might share there?
I mean, it could basically, if a strike happens, that means no ships are coming in, no ships are going out, nothing is being worked on at the container terminals.
Yep.
Now, whether that means BMW still goes on producing cars, COVID kind of changed, their mindset on just in time to just in case. So it really just depends on their storage facilities, their backlog of what they have going on. I'm sure, every company's looking at something different. I think that will need to be probably the most vital thing moving forward if the strike happens, is just your execution tools, and then just working with your partners and being able to communicate effectively, and just coming up with a good execution plan.
Taylor, you're reading my mind. That was one of the final questions I was going to ask you, because I'm sure plenty of companies such as BMW that Chuck points out, and many others, right? There's countless companies that depend on ports really around the world, certainly in the Southeast and the Gulf Coast. They probably have been looking at contingencies for months now, if not maybe longer. Who knows?
Yeah.
And you are offering some advice there, Taylor, to shippers out there. What else? Whether it is like immediate advice or advice for the weeks ahead, anything else you want to recommend to shippers out there that are trying to navigate the situation?
Yeah, really, you just want to use every resource possible to facilitate, the business recovery. So, pay attention to the announcements coming from the port. I know South Carolina ports have released, they're doing extended gate hours. They're encouraging truckers to move to pick up their freight before that 10/1 deadline. They're fully staffed, equipment availability, all these things that matter to get your freight moving. They're working with that. They're working with your shipping partners, and just lean on your partners in the community. I think, going back to the Maritime Association, that's one of my favorite things is it is a community. I'm sure you guys are aware of it as well. Everyone, the supply chain, it's a close knit of people working together to get the best outcome possible. And this doesn't change that.
Excellent point. And very holistic. I love how y'all invite folks. There's so many different players that help make activity happen in our ports, of course, by extension, global supply chain. And I like how y'all are a community and platform and leadership group for all. It's really important. Marcia, before we make sure folks know how to connect with Taylor Jackson here, your comments there on advice to shippers and how we've got to be planning for contingencies, and we're good at that. Well, at least we do a lot of it, I'll say, in global supply chain. Some of us are better than others, perhaps. But any advice you might have, Marcia, for shippers out there trying to navigate the situation?
Yes, for sure. To work considering different scenarios for contingency, because this time it can hurt companies. We have all the shipments for the holiday season. So that is key, to be prepared and work with the companies, work with the shippers, and solidify that relationship and work through the different scenarios. Because since they are not talking, even if the government intervenes, it's going to have a huge impact on the economy.
Yeah, you're right. But two things I heard you say there, Marcia. Number one is work across the ecosystem. Connect with your suppliers, your customers, your industry colleagues. Look for creative ways that may offer up some solutions that maybe you don't think about. And then secondly, timing. Taylor and Marcia, goodness gracious, the timing couldn't be much worse. But you know what? Again, practical optimism. We got to get, Taylor, I don't know about you, but we got to get folks talking first. I'm not sure if we said it in a pre-show or we said it earlier in your segment here, but it's been reported to us that they haven't been talking even. They hadn't even had active conversations since July. We're not going to resolve anything with that being the case. But that's where I think voices like yours and your organization, Taylor, are so important, right? Because if we can't have the central conversations, at least we can have a bunch of them around, and maybe that's how we can maybe conduct a breakthrough. But how can folks, Taylor, is all the great work y'all do, and again, serving as the holistic voice of the maritime world there in South Carolina. I love your programming. I love how y'all invest in the up and coming generation, all those up and coming leaders, and make them aware of the great jobs that can be found, not just in maritime, but in the greater supply chain world. How can folks connect with the Maritime Association of South Carolina?
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me, guys. You can check out our website. I think you linked to it earlier. You are also welcome to send me an email. My email is just tjackson@maritimesc.org. And our website has our event schedule. So we actually will be doing a Maritime and Logistics Summit in February of 2025. So pay attention to our website as more information becomes available for that. And just really appreciate being here today, guys.
Hey, you bet. Appreciate it. Again, my home state, grew up in Aiken, South Carolina. Spent lots of summers in Edisto Beach, just south of Charleston. And it's been awesome to see the Port of Charleston and really just the supply chain ecosystem across the state of South Carolina continue to grow and innovate. And appreciate the great leadership that you contribute towards that. Taylor Jackson with the Maritime Association of South Carolina. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
All right, Marcia, really enjoyed it. I'm telling you, you know, it's tough to give this topic just 20 or 25 minutes because there are so many different angles and aspects to this stalemate where the costs are tremendous, Marcia. We could be doing a show for hours or days, huh?
Yes, the impact is significant. So, yes.
Absolutely. But great to have Taylor join us and appreciate her contributions to all of us as we try to understand what's going on, what's likely to come, and how we can navigate through it. So, folks, we welcome your perspective on this ILA-USMX impasse. Let us know what you're thinking. And maybe if you can share, and we don't have to mention names, company names, mention anything you might be doing to help navigate successfully through the coming weeks and months. Okay. We got a lot more to get to, and I want to dive into this story here, Marcia. So we're moving from oceans to space, and we're going to be sharing a few supply chain challenges that folks at NASA are experiencing. Now, Marcia, admittedly, I'm a big old space nerd. I think if y'all can look, let's see. It's right over. It's right. Nope, wrong shoulder. It's right over there. I got my NASA cup from the Smithsonian. I got my little space shuttle model. The space shuttle program just was so intriguing to me during, back when I was a kid in the 80s and 90s. But here we're going to put a little spin on this, on all things space. We're going to talk about it from a supply chain perspective, because as reported by PYMNTS, they may refer to that as payments, but anyway, PYMNTS, key NASA supplier that makes spacesuits, amongst other things, is encountering financial challenges, which is putting delivery and the overall mission at risk. Axiom Space is a supplier that's involved in a couple of NASA missions, to include building a private space station in low Earth orbit and getting astronauts back on the moon eventually. The supplier's financial difficulties, though, is shining a big old spotlight on supply chain risks that can be found on Earth and in space. That risk is sole sourcing, especially with niche suppliers. It's even more interesting because NASA, Marcia, get this, NASA is famous. They're legendary for baking all that engineered redundancy into its space missions and vehicles, triple, quadruple redundancy, right? To protect lives and to keep the mission going. The engineering, I find it's been just fascinating. However, it hasn't been able to build that same redundancy into its supply chain and sourcing practices. And as we all know, any supply chain is only as strong and resilient as its weakest link. Marcia, your thoughts here about this NASA supply chain challenge?
Yes, it happens right when we have only one or few suppliers that we rely. In this particular one case, because it's so specialized. So that is a risk, and it's hard to have others. But just to avoid to get into that situation, I know now it already happened, but in any case, like for the future, is to develop different options. Maybe it's not for the whole product, but for some component at least, to lower the dependency on the sole source.
Yep. Good stuff there, Marcia. And I would just add, it's kind of like when the shoe industry, right? The shoe industry used to look a lot different, right? And as production shifts over the last few decades have gone on, you lose the supply base, you lose the talent, right? That apparel and shoemakers require. And so if you want to move into new parts of the world, you got to develop that supply base, right? It's kind of like here in the southeast of the U.S., where textile was massive right back in the day. Well, a lot of when automotive companies came into the southeast, one of the first things they would do, like Kia, that really big down in West Point, Georgia, one of the first things they did is they found those displaced textile workers. They hired them, they redeveloped and trained them up on how the automotive industry works. And so these niche suppliers, Marcia, especially if we're going to really obtain the art of the possible in space supply chain, because they're doing so cool, lots of cool things in like low Earth orbit that my friend Kevin L. Jackson tells me about, things that they can manufacture and take advantage of some of those different dynamics. Well, we're going to have to build up the supply base that powers all things across the space supply chain. So we shall see if this challenge that NASA's having now, if they can learn from it and then reinvest it, so to create a bigger opportunity and more growth in the years to come. I think space supply chain is fascinating, huh?
Yes, yes, and as you were talking, Scott, this is for the long term, and that's why sometimes companies don't look at that, and if everything goes well, okay, we continue in that way, but it's necessary.
That's right, Marcia. It is. You kind of almost expect to have lots of niche suppliers in an industry like space supply chain, which, despite all the growth and all the private companies that have jumped in recent years, the ecosystem is still in its earliest stages. So we'll keep a finger on the pulse of this story, and we'll see where it goes from here. All right, moving right along. Next up, we're going to be talking about retail supply chain leaders. We're going to be sticking with the sourcing thing, but we're going to be shifting our focus back to Earth-based supply chains. Now, as reported by our friends here at Retail Brew, retailers continue to embrace sourcing trends and practices that we've seen in recent years. Now, Marcia, I don't think any of these are new as they share in the headline, right? Of course, we've talked long for, feels like forever, about some of the sourcing shifts that we have been seeing retailers and other sectors take, right? Moving supply chains out of China and into other countries such as Vietnam, India, Malaysia, Mexico. In fact, did you know this? Walmart, right? Walmart now sources about 25% of its U.S. imports from India, and that's up from only 2% in 2018. How about that? We've also spoken at length about how many companies are looking at reshoring, onshoring in recent years so they can take advantage of sourcing domestically. I mentioned the shoe industry, the apparel industry, the sports apparel industry, I guess is what I mentioned a few minutes ago. Adidas, for example, is looking to embrace a more local and domestic approach to its sourcing so they can get around certain tariffs. As the article shares, the Adidas CEO, Bjorn Gulden, I think I said that right. I hope I did. I don't want to make any CEO angry of a multi-billion-dollar company. Hey, but as the CEO stated on a recent earnings call, he said, quote, "We have basically tried not to source any products anymore from China into the U.S., end quote. But one big dynamic, Marcia, has some companies investing, believe it or not, more into China. And that is the massive rise of Temu and Shein. Amazon, the big A, has been investing more in China to better compete. But I'm not sure. Here's a big $1 million question. I wish it was just a $1,000 question, but I'm not sure if my eldest daughter, it's big fan of both of those companies, Temu and Shein, are going to make the switch to the big A. We shall see. But anyway, these sourcing practices and shifts and trends, Marcia, your thoughts there?
Yes, that we have seen that they are like companies are looking for different options, alternative to China, but also happen with other countries like Vietnam. And this happened about 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, Scott, that Vietnam couldn't produce, couldn't ship, and then they had to find a different alternative like Indonesia. So as you were saying, this has been for different, like for many years, but it's important to find those alternatives, I think, depending on the industry, because there are some countries that specialize in a particular industry and products.
Yeah. Well said, Marcia. And hey, there's no time like the present to go out and investigate new potential suppliers. That can be pretty challenging at times, and it's kind of surprising, even in this day and age where all this data is at our fingertips. Finding new suppliers that can deliver reliably on what you're looking to get done, that can be challenging. India, going back to some of the manufacturing shifts, India is investing millions, if not billions of dollars to better develop its manufacturing base across the company. I saw a show over the weekend, Marcia. Ethiopia on the African continent, of course, is investing in bringing manufacturing there through a variety of government led projects. So manufacturing is good. Manufacturing is good for industries. It's good for economies, and it's one that ideally, any community can benefit from and create jobs by creating stuff, create value by building and making stuff. So we'll keep our finger on the pulse of these ongoing retail shifts. I want to talk more about manufacturing. Marcia, do you like manufacturing? Are you so I'm a space nerd. I'm a big nerd in general, but I'm also a big manufacturing nerd. Marcia, are you a big fan of the manufacturing industry like me?
Oh, yes, manufacturing, yes. I love manufacturing. I like how everything is made.
I think it's fascinating. It is fascinating.
Yes.
So some of these data points we're about to share here may surprise a bunch of folks out there. So the manufacturing industry here in the U.S., by most, if not all accounts, has been in a bit of a malaise for a couple of years. If Gino is still with us, we were just kind of going back and forth a little bit on social about this the other day. It has been predicted, though, here in the U.S., that the recent interest rate cuts won't impact the manufacturing industry until 2025. So we're kind of on our own in the short term here. However, if you look at more of the global manufacturing industry, right, turn our focus from the U.S. manufacturing sector to other countries around the world, there's a great data-driven read here from our friends at the Visual Capitalist. And if you're new to the Visual Capitalist, check it out, especially if you love all sorts of data factoids from across the business world. According to data from the World Bank, hey, did you know that the services sector is the largest contributor to the GDP for the world's top 50 economies, right? Top 50. So in what countries, rather, does the manufacturing sector play maybe not the biggest role, but a bigger role? Because on average, the manufacturing sector accounts for 15% on average of countries' economies around the globe, right? 15%. But in Puerto Rico, let me get my list here handy. In Puerto Rico, manufacturing accounts for 46% of the economy, due in large part to its pharmaceutical exports. I'm going to read the rest of these off here, Marcia, and get you to respond and to get your observation. Ireland came in number 2 at 34%. And this again is the manufacturing role in these countries' economies and their GDP, according to the World Bank. So Puerto Rico at 46%, Ireland 34%, number 2. Eswatini, number 3 at 28%. China, no surprise there, number 4 at 26%. Thailand at 25%. Haiti at 24%. South Korea at 24%. Vietnam, we talked about them earlier, at 24%. Malaysia at 23%. And Belarus at 23%. Marcia, any observations there? Any surprises, or what's your take here on what we're seeing in terms of manufacturing's role in the economies across the globe?
I think it's very important the conditions, right? Because Puerto Rico, I believe there were some incentives for manufacturing. And I have seen that in other cases. But manufacturing, we can see that it's an industry that countries are investing. Yes, there's no surprise with China and some of the countries that we were talking. Other that comes to mind that I don't think it's on the list, is Turkey
Right.
for materials like non-wovens and plastics, but it's very important, and it's also, as I mentioned at the beginning, is like it's important to see the situation in that country and the benefit to start producing there.
Agreed, Marcia. And Turkey that you mentioned, that's that country has actually been the benefactor, uh, beneficiary, I should say, of reshoring, especially in the apparel industry. Great call out there,
Okay.
Marcia. Folks, check it out. Check out the whole list. We dropped a link there in the chat. Check out the Visual Capitalist. Again, what a great source for all sorts of data, views, trends, old and new, that will help you understand some of the factors shaping our global economy and economies everywhere. Big show to Bob Bova. Great to see you, Bob. Says newer manufacturing facilities with significantly less regulation will make it easier to move offshore and more difficult to bring these jobs back to the U.S. Excellent point. And I would point people to the semiconductor industry. I think they've experienced a few challenges as new sites have been announced here in the U.S. Talent, Marcia, is a challenge. Back to what Taylor Jackson was saying about automation. Well, one of the biggest factors for automation when it comes to manufacturing, warehousing, and plenty of other industries is the inability to find skilled talent, right? That talent war is tough. It has been chewing industries up and spitting them out for years now. And automation, of course, helps address that. Marcia, I'm going to give you the final word. We've got, let's see here. We're going to finish on a fun note here towards the end of the buzz. We're going to talk Halloween in just a second. But before we shift from the manufacturing industry, automation, talent, we've covered a lot just in this last story. Your final word there, Marcia.
Sorry, Scott. I didn't get the question well.
What talent? So talent, right? And Gino's
yes.
Any quick observation on the talent war that's been taking place in manufacturing, where in global supply chain for years?
Yes, the talent shortage is real, and you can see the effect on production. One case that I was very close, for example, there were two crews, one in the morning, the team in the morning, another one it was the second shift. And there was a huge difference in the output. And that was based on the skills. So it wasn't because of materials or the machines. No, it was the skills. So it's a challenge. And my suggestion would be like to think how, considering automation, how we can use that and how we can change the content of the jobs. Because I think the workforce that know how to embrace and leverage technology will have an advantage over the others.
Yep. So a couple of things I heard there. The future of jobs. How can we redefine, reinvent some of these roles, right? That might make them more fulfilling, and by extension, help us attract new talent, right? So I think that's a big opportunity for organizations out there. And then also training. Just like Gino says, training. I think I read the other day, and I think we also touched on this, and with that said, 47%, I think this is Gartner factoid, 47% of chief supply chain officers plan on investing in their workforces from a supply chain skills standpoint. But Marcia, that number is way too low, right? We need a whole bunch more than just half of supply chain organizations out there investing in their team skills. Kind of to your point, all shifts, not just first shift. We get all shifts need to be gaining new skills and learning new ways of doing things better. While more and more automation and technology continues, as it will, proliferating into and across global supply chain. Okay, Let's and T Squared says, hey, let's not forget cross-docking in the manufacturing discussion. Hey, expound on that a little bit more, T Squared. I'd love to learn more of your perspective there. All right, so Marcia, I'm going to assume cooler heads, smarter heads, well-intentioned people hopefully will come to the table and have a grand compromise and put that in place for this ILA-USMX situation that we're in. We'll see. We will probably be reporting on that more later this week. But Halloween is right around the corner, Marcia. And as we finish on a fun note here, that is my least favorite holiday on the calendar. Hey, it may just be me. So check this out. A couple numbers here that might blow people's minds about Halloween, or maybe not. As reported by our friends at Retail Dive, the National Retail Federation, well, they're expecting U.S. consumers to spend about $11.6 billion on Halloween in 2024. That is actually down from the record spent last year, $12.2 billion last year in the States on Halloween. Goodness gracious, that's still a lot of candy, decorations, costumes, and a lot more. They're projecting $500 million on greeting cards. Halloween greeting cards. What? Marcia, I've never in my life gotten a Halloween greeting card. I got to figure out this market. But, I am surprised, though, Marcia. We've talked in the recent months about the smearing that's going on in terms of, for those of you maybe a new word, smearing, instead of focusing all the buying activity in, a week or a month, retailers have been smearing that to meet demand. Believe it or not, there's been a ton of demand in Halloween goods. Some retailers have put Halloween products on the shelves to meet this demand as early as last spring, Marcia. I'll tell you what, there's a lot of things I don't think about in spring, and Halloween is certainly one of them, but some people do. So I got to ask you, Marcia, are you a big Halloween fan? And are there any big traditions that you and maybe your family, friends have? Any observation about Halloween? And are you spending record amounts this year versus last year? Your thoughts there, Marcia?
I'm not spending record amount, but my kids enjoy that very much. Like in particular, the decoration and what they are going to be for Halloween. So I like the holiday, but being in supply chain, I always think if the plan and what the companies produce was enough. So each time I see on the shelves candy that I always think, okay, hopefully there will be enough for everyone each time we are buying some, because there's nothing we can do at this time of the year, right? That was produced and everything was done much earlier.
It's a crying shame if there's not enough candy for everybody, especially chocolate. And it's so interesting, Marcia, how there happens to be a chocolate shortage about this time each year. It's almost like folks want to have that narrative out in the industry, but I digress. Folks, give us your thoughts on Halloween. Probably the one part about it that I've thoroughly enjoyed, and Amanda does a great job. Big thanks, Amanda, and others behind the scenes here today, help with production. But my kids' costumes, their creative and innovative approaches, help powered by Amanda. I should give a shout out to. That's probably the highlight of each and every Halloween season. But we'll see. I'll tell you, some folks are really big Halloween spenders. Goodness gracious, almost $12 billion. How about that? All right, going back to one last note here. T Squared says, hey, cross-docking as it relates to moving finished goods to outbound logistics to retailers and eventually the end consumers. It definitely, as he says, helps to minimize warehouse holding costs. Important. Great call out there, T Squared. Great call out there. Marcia, I have thoroughly enjoyed today's episode. So much going on across the world of global supply chain. Folks, keep your eyes, your ears, your part of your team's focus on what's going on with the ILA and the USMX. Again, we hope that some kind of grand compromise will ultimately be the victor. We'll see. Folks, if you're interested in anything that goes on here at Supply Chain Now, check out this link we're dropping right there in the chat. You can check out from With That Said to our podcast programming to our social, you name it. You can contact us. We'll drop that link and make it easy for you to plug into what we do here at Supply Chain Now. And folks, if you're not connected and following Marcia Williams, especially on LinkedIn, you're missing out on some wonderful daily educational and professional development opportunities. I love Marcia, your infographics, and how you unpack and help make a wide variety of supply chain topics so much easier to understand. As Gino says, that's right, Gino, great call out. Gino says, great episode today. Marcia, keep the infographics coming, and y'all have a great week. I'm with you, Gino. Marcia, you'll keep the supply chain of those infographics coming, right?
Oh, yes, I have a schedule, production, everything there. No, thank you so much for the words and for all the support. Thank you.
You bet. You bet. Great to have you here on The Buzz. Y'all connect with Marcia Williams wherever you find her on social, especially LinkedIn. Make sure to check out Taylor Jackson and the Maritime Association of South Carolina. Appreciate great leadership voices like Taylor and her team. We all need it because we all get through the good, the bad, and ugly all together. And one last call out here. Hey, Venkat, great to see you here via Twitter. It's been a long time. We're doing great. Hopefully you are as well. Folks, as we start to wrap here today, thanks for being here. I know we couldn't hit everybody's comments and questions, but appreciate you being here. Big thanks to our guest today, Taylor Jackson, again with the Maritime Association of South Carolina. Thanks to Chuck Baker for his facilitation. Chuck's great people out there. Keep doing what you're doing, Chuck. Thank you, Marcia Williams, for being here. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Scott.
You bet. And here's the challenge, though, folks. Take one thing we've touched on here today, shared here today, and put it into practice, right? Share it with your teams. Your teams are ready. They are ready to do business differently. And it's our job as leaders to help make that happen. So with all of that said, on behalf of the entire team here at Supply Chain Now, Scott Luton challenging you, do good, give forward, be the change that's needed. We'll see you next time right back here at Supply Chain Now. Thanks, everybody.